Come on in. Yay! Okay, Ejeris, you made it. That's the first step. Let's see. All right. I think we're good. I think we're so. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the conversation. Wow.
Wow. Hi.
Wow.
I'm here.
Okay, I just want to say that's the fastest anyone has made it onto the IG Live. So,
I
might be
know
your
I'm
first time,
competitive.
but we've also got excellence happening here. Hi,
Can you hear
Jared.
me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so we're excellently doing this. Hey, everybody who's joining in, thank you so much for coming. I see some familiar faces. Some of y'all are really coming to every single one of these, and I am here for that kind of human. And those of you who are just tuning in today, we have Ejeris Dixon here, and we are talking about her essay in the book Holding Change. The essay is called We Keep Us Safe, Facilitating Safer Spaces. And it's an amazing essay. It's an amazing author. The thing that's been so exciting with each of these is I'm like, each of the essays feels like it could be its own standalone project or a book of its, like it has its own whole internal work. But this one I feel like for right now in movement is so like absolutely necessary. Like I feel like the words harm and conflict and violence and like beef and abuse and like everything are getting thrown around and without enough context. And then as facilitators, we step into a space and all of it is thrown at us, like fix it, figure it out, like what are we going to do? And I felt like your essay is such a pragmatic offer to people to be like, we can't resolve everything, right? We're still trying to figure out what our role is. And there are some moves we can make before, during, and after that really help. So thank you so much for writing this, for being willing to write this
Thank
essay.
you.
Everyone should go read it. And I'm going to just ask you, the way we've been doing this is I'll ask you some questions. And then if anyone who's watching wants to ask a question, I'm not guaranteeing there'll be time for it because I have a lot of questions myself and I get to prioritize them. But if you do have a question, put it in the little, there's a little down where you can comment. If you look too over from that, there's a box or a bubble that let's see. Are you back? Am I back? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yay.
that was on me. I have a screen time limit on all my social media stuff. And I was like, I wonder if that's going to come up even if I'm on the live. Anyway, it did. Now we know. So if you want to ask questions, put it in the bubble that has a Q, a question mark, not a Q, a question mark in it. I can't follow the chat. So if you put in questions there, they'll just be for you to share with the other people in the chat, but they won't get lifted up into the conversation. All right. Are we ready? Are you ready?
I think so. It's like my first IG live, so I'm just excited that I made it.
I'm really excited that you made it too. How does it feel to be on IG Live?
Um, I like it. It feels like we're FaceTiming
Yes.
um with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
that's how I approach it. It very much is just like this is a conversation, and um, the nice thing about it is that we can save it afterwards. So if anyone doesn't make it or they get here halfway through and they're like, "Fuck, this was good," it's all here. So we're creating this little thing. But yeah, congratulations on
yeah.
making it to IG Live.
I feel like there are those things where you're like, no, the hardest part was me making it here. Okay.
You're like, I made it here. Now I just have to be me, which is going to be fine. So, when did you become a facilitator, Ejeris?
Um, I was thinking about that, and I don't know if I can like mark a period of time.
Huh?
I think there's different points where I've been a part of groups. So I definitely came up. I don't know if there's any other way to come up in facilitation, but within groups where people are rotating leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been in a bunch of spaces like that probably since I was in high school.
Yep.
So whether it was like
So the
clubs or
90s, with you in
yeah,
the 90s?
yeah, 90s. So yes, in the 90s in high school as a young one, in like young like queer, trans, people of color spaces. I accidentally ended up leading like the bi student group at college my freshman year because I followed an attractive human into a room.
How many of us get started that way?
I followed an attractive human into a room. And then I found out she was the coordinator, and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, and I was like, coordinating.
I'll be leaving the room, and you can stay.
Yeah. So I think like by default, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been facilitating in space for quite a while, learning formally, informally, and through and with others.
That's great. So yeah, that question, that's actually the next question I have is like, how did you learn to facilitate? Like I feel like so many of us imprint off of the first people we saw facilitate and we're like, oh, like that's the way we do it. And then at a certain point, we decide to hone our craft, bring ourselves into it, right? What was that arc for you? Like, how did you learn and when did you start to be like, now this is the Ejeris way of doing this?
So I was definitely like a young activist. So I would be in a lot of spaces facilitated by like people I appreciated and cared about. Uh, I was a part of an organizing training probably when I was 20, 21. And so I got to be, I got a little bit of like facilitator training. I learned what the books were, but really, I was blessed. And I think it's kind of similar to younger folks in these times. I was blessed to be in a pretty ripe, like right when there was so much protest happening around the Iraq War, like that period of time.
Yeah.
Um, so there were just a lot of dynamic organizing spaces I was a part of with
Yeah.
geniuses all around me. And I just was, I was good at being helpful, right?
Yes.
I was like, notes, napkins, something, water,
Exactly.
right? Like, how do I just, because I just felt so excited and so blessed to watch like people just think sharply about like how are we going to dismantle like
Yeah.
the monster of like US militarism, right?
Yeah.
How are we going to also do that while like holding queer and trans communities of color and low-income communities at the center, right? So I was like, I get to be in the room, yeah. And so I just got to observe and got a lot of feedback. I was in those that movement culture where people would tell you, yeah, that was great, but not this part, right? And
Yeah.
got to figure out how to be me, how to hold like cultures that, like how to hold dance and music and hip hop and like queerness within a revolutionary space where we're trying to go somewhere together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like all of it's a mix of all of those things, I would say, is how I learned and and by asking, right? By asking people how was that and what could be better.
I'm seeing a few comments about your volume that people would like it to be higher.
Okay, let's
So
see.
you can come. Are you
I can
using
try.
headphones?
I'm using headphones because I
Okay.
didn't want to. I've been observing the other ones. I was like, well, I want to make sure that I can keep the phone upright. So I didn't. I'm using some headphones so I can try speaking.
Yeah.
Here, let me start with taking these off and seeing if y'all can hear me without the headphones. So let's try
Oh
that.
yeah. Let's try that.
Let's see. Are my headphones off now? And can you hear me?
I hear you.
Nope. Hold on.
And let's see if we've
I may
got
have to
like
leave and come back.
all right. Oh, we've got a lot of spam happening too. So I'm trying to clear those people out. All right.
Hey, hey.
I hear you. You sound good to me.
Yeah, is
So let's move it forward. Let's keep going.
people
And
say the volume is better?
yeah. And I think that for those who are in the comments, I think you can also tap on comments that are spammy. So if you see spammy stuff or if you guys are soliciting It's just, that's not what we're going to focus on. We're focusing on Ejeris's brilliance today. So that's what's going to happen. Ejeris, I'd love to hear, what are the values at this point? You know, what are the values that you feel like you bring to facilitation? Like if you're coming into a room, people are going to expect or experience this, and have those values, have those values changed over time?
I think one value that's like increased over time is around, I'm accountable to the people in this room and the people we have decided to serve.
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
it's just recognizing that the rooms we construct can also have like limitations on access, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm supporting the facilitation of a group that is moving towards Black liberation, right? I'm committed to everyone in this room, and I'm committed also to the Black folks who cannot be in this room.
That's right.
And I'm holding both, right? Like not necessarily like but I'm holding both because I want to make sure that if we have a commitment, then I'm also honoring that. And
Yeah.
if that's our political commitment, if that's our accountability mechanism, that feels important to me. So that's a strong value
Yeah.
that I think like there's a piece of me that also sees this is a mix of pragmatism, but also a belief system. Like the room needs to be able, like, especially if I'm not a part of the group, if I'm a part of the group, it's different. But either way, the room needs to be able to hold itself, and I am a helper in that.
That's right.
Right. So
That's
like
right. That's one of
creating
my
that.
favorite things in your essay, actually. Let me see if I can find that line. I was like, yes, that's the way. Let's see. Right here. So you say this: I believe that a safer space is a space where we have constructed the culture and the conditions where people can intervene in harm and violence without needing support from the facilitator. And those spaces are still rare, right? So I'm
like there was definitely, it wasn't necessarily violence, but there was a time where I was facilitating a room where folks' identities, the terms people use to describe their gender, like the terms that people self-identified as, other
yeah.
people felt offended by or
Yes.
were harmful, right? And
Yes.
so I was like, oh my, oh
Yeah.
my, because we are in the construct where it's like if someone is not, if a word is harmful to someone else, that someone is like, that's who I am.
But that's my identity.
Right? We're in a conundrum. And what was beautiful was we had done a little bit of agreements time and a lot of relational space.
Yeah.
So folks just dropped into a, tell me more about what, like how that word connects to your identity. And
Yeah.
that person was like, let me tell you what is harmful for me. And then they
Yeah.
moved themselves
Yeah.
into a dialogue around figuring out how to be in space together, because there was a commitment to sharing space together.
Mm.
And the rest of us were helpers, right? So
And
it's
that's
like,
great.
that's because it's also like facilitation is a bit of us practicing, like facilitation is people coming together to make decisions, to manifest desires and dreams and visions, right? Like,
Yeah.
so there are things that there aren't facilitator, quote unquote, external, particularly external facilitators for. Like, you may be in an action and you
Yeah.
as a group may need to decide to leave. And
Yes.
you'll facilitate yourselves through that process. And
Exactly.
what is not helpful is, oh, we can't do this because Adrian isn't here.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, like the idea, I think that that's been, maybe this is a tangent, we can see if we want to go down it. I think that's one of the impacts of capitalism on movements, and one of the impacts of, Makani was talking about this, like the middle class, the impact of having so many people be like middle class folks who are in facilitation roles, where there's this like, this is a career, I have to keep, you know. So it's like, I feel like there's this wave of people who are like, oh, I want to be hired in a way that people need me perpetually and are relying on me. And I'm like, no, the opposite is actually the purpose of it, which is I want to do the work as quickly as possible so that I can then move this group into their own standing. So I love that
I
value system.
I once had a, I don't even know if I can call it a tantrum because it's just very me, and it's like I myself, right? So I'm
Yeah.
with a group And it's been a series around conflict, like a series around supporting them through something that they couldn't hold themselves, but I was supporting. And finally, I was like, I don't want to come back anymore.
And you're like, I will not.
So we have 4 hours.
Yes.
To figure out how we gonna do that.
Yeah.
And I am available, but
I love that. Until 4 hours from now, at which point that will end. That's great.
And so I think there's a piece of it that's capitalism, but a piece of it that's confidence, right? Where folks are like, how could I am not expert in, except like, right, like humans, like harming and humaning, right, intertwined. And moving through harm, like it's a part of the human experience, whether or not like you have a 10-point plan or wrote a book on it or read a thing, because you have made it here.
Yes, that's right. Everyone in the room has somehow made it to that room, has facilitated through, you know, so much of it for me is I'm like, you're facilitating in your family, in your friend group, what movie are we going to watch? Like it's happening all the time. And then movement has this particular context, and the facilitators inside of movement have this particular context, which isn't a higher or lower than, right?
Yeah.
And it's also not an absence of self, you know, like Makani talks about, it's like, I don't disappear and become like an objective force, you know, thing. It's like, I'm still a human in the space. And I feel like you both walk with so much strategy into this space where it's like, I'm a facilitator and I'm also like seeing a really big picture here that I want to make sure you see. I want to know if you have any particular Ejeris facilitation rituals, like when you're coming in to hold a space, you know, is there stuff that you're like, I have to do this to get myself right, or I have to do this to get the room right? Like, what are your rituals?
I think the word practices is more how I see them for me, but yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
40, so yeah, this is going to be very Ejeris style. At least 48 hours before, all the dramatic people in my life are muted, right? So they may not know because I may not want any more drama.
Yes.
But it's just more like if there's a text argument, if there's like a high needs family member, whatever that is, right? Because what I don't want is all that coming in.
Yeah.
My experience of facilitation is deep listening, but deep listening through all of my senses.
That's right.
Like hair on my skin and like what I see and like smell, like, so I want to be available. And so I try to create some space in me, which for me is like, I play roles around, I've gravitated towards roles where there's an urgent need, probably for most of my life. That's probably like the life I came up into.
Yep.
I also have to like, so sometimes people will know, like, you may not hear from me for a while.
Yeah. Like, it might be quiet.
I'm going quiet, right? So yeah, there's no talking to me during the break. There's no nope, right? So I go quiet. I try to do something active and also not active that has nothing to do with what I'm facilitating.
That's
right. So, and like if I need to go towards, like my bike or some stretching, and I want to have some interaction with either sun or water. So sunrise, a sunset, water, right? Especially for the ones where I'm nervous, right? Because I just kind of want like some like me and universe are doing this together, or me and ancestors put me here to support, right?
That's right. I love that.
So I feel like those are the, you know, like eat something good, hydrate, hopefully sleep, but if not, be okay with not, you know, just make space for the honor of holding space.
That's right. I love that. I love the idea that there's a facilitation, even of your own energies and all, like, you know, what you just spoke about. It's like each of us as a human being has a multitude of things happening at all times, right? And somehow it's like, how do I center all of that? How do I ground all of that in a way that allows me to show up now for these people without putting myself on a back burner? It's like I want to be fully there, right? I always feel like my little facilitation judgment comes out when I see people where I'm like, you're trying to do too many things. Like, you're not here. And I say that as I'm like, I love to do 20 million things, but I'm like, how do you be here? Especially because, you know, the stuff that you're writing about here, I think is some of the most, it's the main reason why people are actually calling a facilitator in, whether they know it or not, is that there's a conflict, there's a struggle, there's something happening, and people either are conflict averse, they're not comfortable bringing it up, or they have such different styles of conflict that they're not navigating it well. So before we get into like the how we navigate it, I'd love to ask you what you feel like is the purpose of having conflict and struggle inside of movement. Like, how does it actually help us figure out strategy?
Yeah, I mean, there's alignment that we need to do or decide to not do, right? So I would be uncomfortable if we all came to the room and inherently agreed, which is what I think sometimes people want. Like,
yeah,
isn't the ideal space where we are? And I was like, no, the ideal space is when we say,
I mean, that's the ideal cult space. If you're,
yeah, I know. I was like, I don't like, I want a revolution with some struggle, and I want a vision so ambitious that we have to hash it out a bit.
yes,
right? And it's about how we do that and don't go for each other's spirits in the process.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So I think it's essential.
Yeah.
And it's essential that we all build those skills. And we also know when it's like, oh, I'm not equipped, right? Yeah. I am not in the right position, or I don't have the trust, right?
That's right.
So I think I see that as essential. And for me, I have learned so much. I think I was just like talking with a friend this weekend about something where we were kind of like not even like debating, discussing, talking shit, all that together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Came out with like, oh yeah, I learned something here. I shifted, right? Like I grew. I'm better for it.
That's right.
There is a conflict averse utopian view that we are not actually like having these conversations with each other, but if we're in alignment, something else is wrong about what we're trying to do. Like the vision is off, the room is not like accessible, like there's something off. That's a flag.
That's right. That's right. I feel like that Autumn said in our conversation, she was like, you can't meaningfully agree until you've meaningfully disagreed. Like that there's actually something about knowing you can show up. I think of it more on a biological, I'm just sort of like a biodiverse place has differences. Like, just like, oh, what's your way of doing this? It's different from mine. The richness is actually in the difference.
Yeah.
Not in the sameness.
And also like sometimes words mean different things to
literally
different things,
Yeah, especially right now. I feel like with the way the internet is moving, there's so many people who are receiving their politicization through the internet without actually necessarily going to source materials and being like, oh, this is what this person meant by this word. And then it got thrown around. Everyone's like, that's neoliberal. And I'm like, actually, it's not. It is problematic. It might be in this other, it's actually fascist or whatever. It's a different thing.
Yeah, it's a different,
it's a different thing. And I don't want to be like language policing, so I'm like, okay, let's make up the new words, but also let's be willing to talk and interrogate, like, wait, what you just said rubbed me a certain way. I want to know, like, what did you mean by that? And I do feel like the facilitator, part of what the facilitator's job is to be in a room saying, I see one of those moments happening where y'all aren't actually hearing each other, which means as a facilitator, you have to be able to see that. So I'd love to pivot now into the safe space creation that you talk about so brilliantly, which is like, what is the role of the facilitator in creating safer spaces?
And I think if there's a through line between everything I named, it's a willingness to try, an openness to, I don't want to say an openness to struggle, an openness for it to be hard, right? Like sometimes we're trying to achieve safety because we are supposed to guarantee it, except that no one's done that for us, and no one's done that for any other human in the space, right? So
That's right.
our best move is to like create a space that is in the most alignment we can collaboratively and collectively deliver
That's right.
for that time,
That's right.
right? And
Yeah.
so I think of a couple things, and it's why prep feels important to me, from like getting to know the people, even if you know them, even if you're part of the group, like
Yeah.
what are people looking for in this meeting?
Yeah.
To acknowledge that I feel like there's an elephant in the room with the wisdom I need.
Oh, yes, elephants. Okay.
Right? Like there's this like in my head, like there's this elephant walking around with like, I know what caused the conflict.
That's
Right?
right. I've got something to offer here.
But it's never,
Yeah.
but often it's not directly named, right? So like a willingness to be surprised.
Yeah.
Um, a space where people can be vulnerable, because if there is a harmful dynamic between multiple people may be
Yeah.
using code words and you won't catch them.
That's right.
You'll catch the energy, right?
Yes.
You'll notice that someone is being impacted, and you'll try to
Yes.
figure like, how is this happening? Like
Yeah. Like
every time this
what's
person
actually going on right now?
collective, this person like has a, like, but that's about like observation and listening and
Yeah.
taking breaks and taking pauses to check in.
Yes.
Um, even if a group doesn't have like a safety team or safety person, even acknowledging like vibe watchers, vibe checkers,
That's right.
right? Like who's gonna help you hold the energy, right? And the
Yeah.
integrity of the space. Um, and to never, I think there are very few things that I would call mistakes, but
Yeah.
one thing I would call a mistake would be avoidance, right? So if this like elephant wisdom in the room has
Yes.
revealed themselves to
Yes.
you,
Yes.
the goal and gift is to like hold that space, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Like hold that space and move through, as opposed to like, oh, it's time to go. Oh, I'm hungry.
It's like
Oh,
it's
oh,
time for a team building exercise. Yeah.
yes, right. And also to not us to often we're doing a little trial and error here. So a
Yeah.
breathing exercise may work for you, and it may work for like 30% of the room, right?
Yeah.
And then there may be people who are like, I don't want, if folks,
That. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Try a practice, try a different practice, take a pause, ask people like, what do you see happening here? What do I not know? How do
That's right.
we how do we hold this?
That's right.
It's different around like, if we're calling each other names, that's a different piece. If there is physical violence, there's a different piece. But I'll say like I learned something once when I came into a space. I was asked to help facilitate a group, and I didn't do prep, right? So I've learned a lot of these things like the hard way. I was just like,
Oh yes.
hey, I got it, I'm here. Hello, happy to help, right? And then I couldn't figure out why people were like sullen and
Yeah.
resigned, even
Yeah.
with just basic things like
Yeah.
lunch options, like, so I it's like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if folks are cool since the fight happened. And it's like, the
The
fight.
fight.
When who fought?
What was happening?
Us two. When was that? Last
Yeah.
week. How have we attended to that? Um, got it. We're pausing. I'm gonna talk to
Yes.
everyone individually. I'm gonna do my part
Yeah.
now.
That's great.
And that's my bad, right? And
That's great. I mean, that I do feel like you learn that lesson one good, solid, strong time. You're just like, holy shit. Like, and then hopefully there's enough time to pivot, But I do think that I really love you speaking about that, because it also ties in what the last thing you say, which is for the facilitator to do afterwards, is to be accountable.
yeah.
And I feel like those are those moments where you're like, oh, like, maybe I can see clearly the reasons why I wasn't prepped, or I wasn't, I didn't know that there was a fight happening or whatever. but then being accountable, like, hold on, we're pivoting right now. You know,
Yeah.
like we need to come attend to this thing. And it never ceases to amaze me how I'm like, people will just move in that state with the elephant unnamed and stomping on everything and, you know, taking up all the space and all the air and everything else. People just move that way,
I
like
know.
indefinitely until the organization implodes or whatever. And it's just like, but this just needs, it's like a boil. It's like, this needs to be lanced. We need to know we need to get this out of here, you know?
I think it's like, I think I'm a little allergic to that, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that it makes me so uncomfortable that
Yeah.
that I've had more practice and how to move through it.
Yes.
Just I think like dynamics are loud to me,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
and make me so uncomfortable that I'm just like, people are very upset.
Yes.
Why would we pretend that people
Yeah, and I really want to highlight for people what you just said. You paused and you're like, I'm going to ask everyone now. I'm going to talk to everyone now. Because it's also not the facilitator's job to intuit or guess or read minds,
right?
right? It's like, I can feel that something's off. Can anyone name
Yeah,
it? You know, can
yeah.
we talk about it? Can we hear about it? That's different than,
I
you
hear
know,
this. I think of that.
yeah.
Sometimes I think you can do that, but not actually to intentionally land the wrong thing to surface the right thing.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But it's still the same. Like what we're doing is we're getting feedback in real
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
to figure out how to move in collaboration with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um, I want to ask you, you know, because I feel like these things happen where trends happen inside of movement,
oh
right?
yeah,
And so, you know, we've both been facilitating since the 90s. So I'm like, we've seen multiple trends move through. And when a trend comes through, it's like suddenly everyone's using the same language or has a similar new critique or blah, 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 whatever else, right? And right now, it feels like the main focus for so many people is like safety in a variety of ways. When do you feel like you became attuned to safety as something that need to be tracked and built within movement that we need to like figure out a good way to hold? What brought your attention there?
I think I was pulled in. So my favorite conversation with long-term organizers is like how many times the movement how many times has the movement broken your heart, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how have you navigated that? So it was
Yeah.
definitely a time. It was one of the 3 or 4 times where I quit movement, and I got asked to apply to work at the Audre Lorde Project, and I'll be so honest. It
Yeah.
was I was like, for the safety work, I was in my bar fight era, so
Yeah.
that era
Yes.
passed, right? But like sometimes, like some of us learn how to facilitate a lot of things by being
That's
by,
right.
by being the like hard to contain one, and that's not my entire story, but all that is I never saw myself as a survivor, even though I had experienced violence,
Uh-huh.
um, because I was uh, I like a feeling of I didn't want to touch trauma at all inside of myself. I
That's right.
think that there was a fear of like that it would swallow me up and I would never get out again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, nope, nope. Other people are that. They should get what they need. I am separate of it, right?
That's right.
And so I'm working on a project to address safety in the neighborhood I live in. I see it as external until I realize it's not, right?
Yeah.
And I also I'd been an activist and organizer on a lot of different issues, but I realized how gorgeous it is to work on creating safety,
That's
because
right.
there's a way that when that is our goal and when we're exposed to all the ways that humans harm each other, but also all the possibility we build, there's a real tenderness that shows
Yeah.
up in how people take care of each other
Yeah.
and generosity of spirit. So there is
Yeah.
something that it's not just that it was healing for me,
Yeah.
right? But it was that it was so many of us in the process
Yeah.
were engaging in work also being the people we wish we had,
Yeah.
but hadn't. But just the ability to say to people, like, we're here for you,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And remembering the times where you wish somebody had known to say that to you.
That's right.
So I think there's something that's something specific that happens in spaces when we're creating safety and addressing violence,
Yeah.
as a part of our liberatory work.
Yeah.
That there's just something really beautiful at the intersection of like healing, integrity, and care that's experienced in
Yeah.
another way.
I think that's so, that resonates so deeply, because I feel like so much of what we're looking for when we come into movement is belonging, like a place where it's like, oh, like I was hurt here, I was hurt there, but here, this space says, it's articulating, like, you know, we're trying to fight all those things. And so, yeah, we will be able to belong to each other. And then hijinks ensue because the humanity is still always there. But then when we turn and face it directly, there's something that, I don't know, it's like a higher call, you know, just like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a higher call and we can all participate in it and we can call each other towards it. And we create these pockets. Right now, it's like I see that. I'm like, oh, there's pockets of belonging. And like, how do we scale that? You know, like not scale the pockets to be bigger, but how do we have more and more people able to access that belonging for themselves?
Yeah.
Because that question, I have this question here of like, how safe can we be?
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I know there's people who are like, there's no such thing as a safe space. And like, we can't create that safety for each other. And, you know, you intentionally use the word safer rather
Yeah.
than straight up safe. But I'm like, how safe can we be? How safe can we get together?
God, I thought about this, and then I, we can, I think we can create a level of safety.
Yeah.
We can create the safety we commit to, and it's measured um, in our failings. Because I think that that's right. Like the same way that like sometimes in a life we focus so much on getting it right, but like who we truly are shows when we make errors.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So people really focus on I did not achieve safety. And my interest and curiosity is, when harm or violence happened in your space,
Yeah.
did you respond? And that, and your response, the way you responded, the intention you put into it, that's what we should measure like safety by.
I love that. I love that. Like, I keep thinking, you know, people are like, we have a rape culture, we have a call out culture, we have a cancel culture, we have this culture, we have that culture. And I'm like, I think the culture we want is an accountable culture, right? Like a culture where we're like, I'm accountable for what happens here, like what happens in the spaces that I'm in and in the places that I'm a part of and in the relationships that I'm in, and like I'm accountable. And sometimes I can hold that well, and sometimes I fumble it. And the fumbling is such a tender place because I'm like, we haven't really learned. Like I wasn't taught that. And I think most of the people, when I come in to facilitate, I'm like, how are we acting this way? But it's like, of course we're acting this way. We don't have some other models for how to be. So then what does accountability look like, and who is it with? And I love this idea that it's in relationship. It's in those spaces that we're in. What was your writing process for this?
God, writing is so hard for me.
Yeah.
Like it is so, like when I imagine, I don't know, in my imagination, like when you write, you like wake up and like words just flow out. And
I mean, when I write,
like
true, actually, that I do. I just lay there like words.
And just words, just words. Just words are surrounding you, and they're like dancing. Y'all are dancing. You're having a good time.
Yes, I just lay there like
hop on. Yeah, they just hop on the page and
no, that's
order.
You got it. You called me.
Yeah. So my writing process involves, if I'm honest, a lot of like talking to myself and talking at my phone, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because this is my best mode of communication.
That's right.
And
Do
so,
you dictate into the phone?
yeah, I dictate
Yes.
into the phone
Yes. I love
and
dictation.
I edit it. And sometimes I think I had a little bit of a frame. So like the before, during, after was just
Yeah.
easier for me to think of because
So helpful.
I got I got swirly without it, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, let's break it down. What do
Yeah.
we do here? What do we do here? Because I also started to feel the pressure of, am I writing a how do I can't write a roadmap to safety for people in facilitation, right? And then I was like, break it down. Let's
Yeah.
right, like what are some practices that are useful?
Yeah, I guess I can.
So yeah, I definitely like there's me talking into the phone. There's often like in standard like facilitator organizer life, I live with a lot of butcher paper. So
Yeah,
there's like me outlines on butcher paper and post-its that go
that's right.
places. Um, and then there's also time away, right? Like
Yeah,
there's time with and time away so
yeah,
that it like plays in my head a little bit and
that's right.
does things, or I take a bath, like it comes up for me.
That's right. I love that. Like I often try to build in a swim or a walk or something where like I can't even write. Like there's like if I wanted to, I couldn't. Like I have to let the ideas kind of build up and push against the container a little bit. So I'm like, did that make sense? So how does it feel to you having this essay out in the world and how would you, in your ideal world, how would you like people to use it?
Um, I really am. I'm excited about the book. Like I'm excited about being a part of the book. I'm so excited that you wrote it, and I think it's so needed. And the intersection of facilitation and mediation. You got assessments, so I'm happy to be at the party.
I'm so glad you said yes. I was like, maybe Ejeris would write this. Yes.
And yeah, it feels like I feel good about the offering. I reread it. I hadn't read it in a while. I read my
Yeah.
piece and I was like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
You
right.
put some stank on it.
Yeah,
Like,
I was like,
that's
I'm
really
right
nice.
with this, you know. And I need to remember this to when I when I get overwhelmed, when I do too much,
Yes.
I right like reminding myself of my own politic of facilitation, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about it, and I don't want people. There is not one roadmap to safety,
That's right.
so I do not want that out of the reading of this essay, right? There's no,
Yeah.
I don't know, 1-2 step safety. But what I would say is I want people to like see what resonates and move with that,
Yeah.
what's missing and add it on, see what
Yep.
inspires. Talk about it within the groups that you're with, right?
Yes.
If you're, yeah, like see what it. I think the conversation connected to it is what I'm super curious.
Yeah. No, I'm super glad. Yeah, I feel like that. Like I'm like, this isn't a how to. This is a like Black feminists have tried,
Yep.
you know, and a lot of it has worked really well. Like we are in a moment of Black movement that is huge and other movements that are huge in large part because of these Black feminists and like shining a light on the people who are often behind the scenes, right? You know,
Yeah.
like um, I feel like we both came up in a time where it's like facilitation doesn't make you a visible celebrity person. So, and I think that's good. You know,
Yes.
I think that's a good thing. And I think there's this balance to strike of I don't think these should be hyper visible famous roles and there's a way that those lessons do need to be gathered. Like what you're doing, what you're experimenting with at Vision Change Win, what you're holding as a facilitator, like light does need to be shown on that because I think so often the resources don't flow towards where they need to flow.
Yeah.
Right? So that was a part of it. I was like, if you think that safety in movements is really important, there's actually places that the resources can flow that would help that become more possible, right? There's brains behind all this, you know?
Can I tell you? So this morning I was looking at the essay and I was thinking about a piece that I would have added that,
Oh, ooh,
um, but
second edition. Oh, it's
in
like,
my brain and I name it, but like I almost wanted to do like the logistics for safety, right?
right.
But
We can add that. We can add that. Like I'm totally, I definitely add things for second printings and third printings. So I'm like,
well, because like how people are treated even before they enter into the room, and it depends on like what
yeah,
place we're constructing, but there are so many different facilitators where we put a lot of intention also in either if we're directly doing it, like how is a space set up, what how are access needs attended to, if it's
that's right.
a person, what is food like, how were
That's,
people treated in their travel,
that's right.
how did we message and communicate with and give notice about what we were doing,
That's
right?
right.
Because there's all this way that it all extends, it all comes into the meeting and
Yeah,
extends from it, right?
that's right.
So if we're
Yeah,
thinking about the arc of culture, there's a way that if people have felt crappy by either you or how the space has been interacting with them prior to them entering into
yeah,
the space, then they
yep.
enter with that like energy. They're not going to be present. They're not going to be trusting. You know?
That's right. I mean, there's a section on accessibility in the book for that because I feel like that piece. It took me a long time to learn that. It actually took me like experiencing my own disabilities to really learn at a different level. Like, and I feel embarrassed about that, and I feel like okay, that's how I learned it. You know, like I was a hyper efficient Virgo. You know, and then all of a sudden I was like, bitch, you can't walk around like you used to, and that makes the space not accessible, which means it's not safe for the people here who, like, how is everyone participating? I think that that's key. And I also think it shows that you're inviting people into space you've thought about.
Yeah.
And so they can then make a different kind of request. Like, oh, you're thinking about us coming into this. Like, here's what I need.
Yeah, like you've been on my mind. And also like sometimes it's connected to the prep, like when you meet with people beforehand. And so that you have a
Mm,
relationship or you're building on relationship or um you're bringing their feedback and desires. Like I just think there's so many ways that um it's if we it feels fake if we treat people better once they enter the room than we did prior to that.
absolutely.
And so you're going to create a trust issue for yourself in
That's right.
that process.
That's right. We have some questions from the audience,
Okay.
and this is this has been a very special audience with lots and lots to say. But one of the questions that I think is really right on point here is, what if folks are unwilling to acknowledge or name a conflict or fight that has happened?
Ah. I think that there are often individuals who are in that space, but I've rarely experienced an entire room.
Yeah,
So I think it's pretty normal for if you're even if you're within the group you're facilitating, for you not to know all the dynamics,
that's
right?
right.
And for some people within those dynamics, either they've experienced harm, they've experienced violence or abuse, and so they don't want to open themselves up to more, or whatever is happening, for you to not know.
Yeah,
Usually there is an impacted witness that um, that also wants to help but may not have an avenue to.
that's right.
So I think it's around creating a space where people understand the intersection between conflict, harm, vision, values, and impact, right? Like we
That's right.
want to do X.
That's right.
Except XYZ is preventing us, therefore, like it's a little bit.
Yeah,
So I think now I've met with groups where the majority of the group is conflict averse. And that's tough,
that's really hard.
right? Like a group is a group that's
Yeah,
also committed to not 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 existing very long
yeah,
and not achieving their goals.
that's right. That's right. I mean, that holding up the mirror for people sometimes, I think can be so, sometimes it's the most helpful thing you can do in the room. It's just sort of be like, y'all are not, if you're not even willing to fight with each other and, you know, over what matters, then how are you going to fight for the people that you're supposed to be supporting and advocating for in this space?
Absolutely.
That's great. Great answer. You know, Makani also does, she does this like, everyone just write on a post-it note so you don't have to put your name on it. Because she's like, well, if y'all are that scared.
Ooh, I'm going to use that.
You know?
Just write it down.
There's someone who said, what does accountability look like to people in and out of the room, right? Which I think is interesting, because I know you've had this experience of where we did this whole process and it's feeling great in the room, but then people who weren't there are like, what the fuck still?
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you navigate that?
God, I think that's so situational. It's so,
the book. Okay, so.
It's so situational to of course, accountability is as the group defines it. And that needs to take into account who's not in the room, the method that happens, right? Like some people, it's a second meeting where we discuss what happened. Some people, it's a email or a statement out to their membership. Some people, it's one-on-one conversations with the folks who are most impacted. I think it really has to land with culture and impact. So it's hard to say one way. And it also often connects with privacy, right? Like depending on what happens, right?
That was what was like going off in my mind is I'm like, this is also part of this new cultural world where everyone thinks that they have the right to everyone else's processes and business and even private things. You know, I'm like, this did get sorted. It got handled. There was a process. That's all that anyone's going to know about it.
Yeah.
But we lack the trust in each other to be like, all right.
And also like there's some saviorism that can happen too. There's just like, okay, so do we need to know because we're impacted? Do we need to know because we think we could do better? Like, right. Like there is a ton of,
or if it has a larger fallout, you know, and I think those factors all matter. And I think we're learning them. And I want to say, I feel like the work that you're doing and the way that you've been holding movement, the offerings that Vision Change Win has been putting in are all helping us figure out how we navigate these different territories. And I am really grateful that you're in it, that you're in the fight, you know, you're like in the ring, like maybe not bar fighting, but it feels like you're still swinging, you know, in the ways that need to be swung. And I want to honor, we have about 2 minutes left. And I just wanted to know if there's anything you want to uplift that's happening with Vision Change Win or that you're up to that you want to uplift and let people know about.
What am I put out a piece in the Forge, I think a month or two ago, that was about abolitionist organizers and the kind of need for us to navigate conflict and harm. So I want to elevate that. At Vision Change Win, we're doing regular safety and security trainings that happen every month. You can just like from intervening in violence to processes or supports for organizations to also direct action.
Awesome.
I can't think of anything else more than anything.
That's a lot of things.
It's a lot.
It's like during a whole full panini press, that's a lot of things. So I'm like,
yeah, I just want people to, practice good work, you know?
Yeah. I'm grateful you're doing it. Vision Change Win, you can find it. They have an Instagram account. They're on all the different socials. They have their own website. You can find it. This conversation will be saved as part of the Holding Change Instagram TV, IGTV. I don't know. I sound like your auntie, but it'll be saved so people can come back and watch and learn from Ejeris's brilliance. And I think that the next conversation we have coming up in the series is going to be on Friday with Prentice. Prentice talking about boundaries. So it'll be exciting. Thank you so much for making time for this. I hope you have the best bio break of all time before the next thing that's happening. And I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, y'all, for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, bots. Bye, humans.